you're good to go.
All right. Hello, beady friends. Welcome to the Michael's Jewelry Making 105 Make a Statement Bangle Bracelet class. I'm Meredith Roddy. I am a designer and the product marketing coordinator at Beadalon, and we're going to give a couple minutes here at the very beginning to welcome everybody, let everybody get set and get excited. We are going to be making a bracelet today using memory wire, and we're gonna put a little our own unique little spin on it. But really, what we're going to be learning is how to cut memory wire, how to bend memory wire ends to finish them. And then we're going to talk a little bit about color blocking, about some fun beads that we're going to be using, and different ways to embellish it. So we've got a great crowd here. Just for anyone who is just joining us, I will reintroduce myself. I'm Meredith Roddy from Beadalon, and this is the Michael's Class Jewelry Making 105 Make a Statement Bangle Bracelet. So without further ado, I think we are ready to just jump right in and get started. So if you wouldn't mind switching the camera over real quick, and we can talk a little bit about what we're going to be using today. So I believe that the instructions were able to be posted, and if not, Yvette can go ahead and post the instructions for everybody. And the instructions are kind of a loose guide. I write the instructions with the idea that you'll be following along with the class as well. And in this class, we're going to do it a little bit cooking show style, a little bit real-time style, just because we're doing a lot of stringing of beads up on memory wire. You don't need to see me do all of the stringing up. So we're going to start. I'm going to talk a little bit through the starting process and then through the finishing process. And hopefully if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. Yvette from Beadalon will be helping us out answering questions as well. So don't be shy if you have any questions about memory wire, about Beadalon, about Michael's, just let us know. So let me show you the products that we're going to be using today. So first and foremost, we are going to be using Remembrance memory wire. Now this is stainless steel memory wire. And what memory wire is coils, almost much like a slinky, right? Of wire that holds its shape. So it's going to bounce back when you pull it out. So unlike artistic wire or German style wire, it's going to hold its shape. So when you work with it and when you wear it as a bracelet, like this one I have right here, it's just going to go right on to your wrist. You don't even need a clasp or anything. So to cut memory wire, and we'll talk about this again in a couple of minutes, but we're going to need a memory wire shear. This is the first and not the last time I will be saying this during our class today. Only cut memory wire with memory wire shears. Don't use your good cutters. Don't use your okay cutters. Don't use any other cutters but memory wire shears, because this is such a hard and sturdy material. You will ruin all of your other cutters if you try to cut them, or you try to cut it with anything but the memory wire shears. Now in the instructions, I do suggest that you could use a standard wire looping pliers to turn the ends of memory wire. Today we're just going to be using a round nose plier. There are a number of other tools that you can use to turn up the end of memory wire, and a couple of other techniques that you can use, and I'll touch on them in a little while. You are also going to need the Findings Variety Pack from Beadalon. And in this pack, there are a couple of different clasps, some tags, but today what we're going to be using from this kit are the jump rings. And we'll talk about jump rings in a couple of minutes. Lastly, and is it the most fun, we're going to need some beads. So for our design that we are making today, I used some words. I wrote good vibes only. And to do that, I use these really cool crafting beads from, of course, our friends at Michael's. And I love that there were not only enough enough letters that I could write good vibes only on this bracelet, but I actually changed up my words for today's project because there are 100 pieces, right? So you can you can do several different statements on your bracelet. And then lastly, I used a graduated, both in color and in size, strand of glass beads. This is the glass pink ombre. And for the project, I actually have over here the glass aqua ombre. I'm just going to bring that into focus really quickly so everybody can see what I'm using for the part number and for the beads. And you can see I've already cut this one apart and done some pre-stringing. That's how we do it here in the cooking show style of class. So without further ado, we know what our materials are going to be. I'm going to move everything to the side and let's get started. So I mentioned in the beginning that we are going to be using memory wire. Now, memory wire is different than bead stringing wire. It's different than copper crafting wire. It's different than, let's see, what other kinds of wire are out there on the market. It's different from all of those because it has a memory. It keeps its shape. So I can pull it out and it will spring back in that same round shape. You don't need special tools to straighten it, but you do need a special tool to cut it, and that is the memory wire shear. Okay, some people will call it a memory wire cutter. Now for this project, I am suggesting that we cut 4.5 loops of memory wire. So I am going to count out. See, at first I have to find my end. I've been playing around with my memory wire so much that sometimes it gets kind of tangled along itself, but it's not hard to just kind of put it back. It's really just like a slinky, right? And we actually manufacture, as I'm doing this, I can tell you, we manufacture this memory wire right here, right? Actually, now we do it in Coatesville, Pennsylvania. We used to do it in Westchester, Pennsylvania, right behind my office. So it was kind of neat to walk outside back into the factory and see all of the spools of memory wire drying on the racks. Okay, so let's see, 4.5. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's just do 5 for good measure. I always recommend when you're doing a pattern, cut more than you need. These materials, unless you're working with sterling silver or something that's really a precious, precious metal, always cut a little bit more. You'll save money in the long run cutting a little bit more than you would if you were cutting a little bit less. Take it from me after years and years of experience. So the memory wire shears are a true flush cutter. And this is what they look like. I love how close up that gets, right? This is the jaw, and it's going to give you a really nice flush cut on both sides of that wire. And a flush cut just means that it's going to cut straight down the middle. So you're not going to have any pointing edge on either side. So easy enough. You open it up, you put it on, and you squeeze. And you can kind of hear that very satisfying click. And that is because these cutters are specially made to cut this very, very hard and very, very rigorous material. Now, I mentioned in the instructions, it does say that it is suggested to use the standard looping pliers to create this loop. You can also, as I'm going to demonstrate here, use a round nose pliers. And we do have also some specialized tools that you can use to turn this end. But this is my favorite way to start and end memory wire. It's super easy. And you don't need any extra glue or any extra accoutrements to do it. So I usually choose a spot about halfway on my pliers, and I'm going to rotate my wrist counterclockwise, right? Yeah, counterclockwise. And that counterclockwise is against this bend. Some people will rotate clockwise with the bend. I like doing it against the bend. I think it's a little bit more secure, and I don't know, it's just how I learned to do it and how I teach how to do it. So this end is right in the end here. So I don't have anything sticking out. I'm coming right up there to the end, and I'm just gonna rotate my wrist. Now, once I get my wrist so that I can't comfortably rotate it anymore, I'm not gonna over rotate it and hurt myself. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to use small movements and hold on nice and tight and use small movements to get that loop nicely bent in place. Okay. Now, pro tip. Little something. Yes.
You're showing it now with round nose pliers, but could you also show it with wire looping pliers as well?
Unfortunately, I cannot because I don't have that tool with me right now, which is why I'm showing it with the round nose pliers. I do apologize. Maybe we'll do a little special, a special extra little YouTube or Instagram post with that, but I do apologize. We're working from lots of different places in the world, and those pliers did not make it to the office today. So a pro tip for this, you can see now that my loop is kind of resting on top of the wire. If you want, you don't have to, but if you want, you can come back in with a pair of either bent chain nose pliers or chain nose pliers and just very gently nudge that back so it looks more like an I pin rather than a P. Okay, so it's just one of those things I like to do, I like to teach because it gives it just a little extra design. It's going to function the same way. So now we get to the beading. I feel like there's always some prep work to do before you get to the beading, right? And then you can get to the fun part of the project. Now, since I have my 2 strands of blue already in use, I'm going to use my strand of pink, but it's the same block of kind of a darker, medium, and then light shade that also works on the blue. A darker, a medium, and a light shade. And I'm just going to leave that right here so everyone can kind of see where we're going. Okay. And I like this project because not only is it pretty easy once you know how to, one, cut your memory wire only using your memory wire shears, or, and I should say, turning the loop in the memory wire using either your round nose pliers or that wire looping pliers. Once you know those 2 things, the sky is the limit on memory wire. So I'm just going to cut these off right here. And now let's talk about the design process. So I like laying out my beads before I do my design if I'm doing something where the placement of the beads matters. So you can either use a bead board or you can just use your work surface if you don't have a bead board. And in the instructions, I actually put the pattern that I use for this project. And again, the thing about this particular project and designing with memory wire in general is I feel like, sure, you could follow a pattern, but you can also do something that is much more loose or much more rigorous, if that makes sense. Like the bracelet I have on here, this is actually a pattern, but it looks a little bit more more mixed up because I didn't focus as much on getting I didn't have any letters that I needed to line up, and I didn't have to worry about the gradations. So again, it's just kind of a little aside as I'm getting everything out here to remind everybody not to be constrained by a particular pattern or really, I like to think of patterns more as guidelines. And it's really good when you're first learning how to bead to follow a pattern, but then the sky is the limit. You do you, and go for whatever it is that speaks to you. All right, so my pattern is, let's see, I have 2 small beads, 2 medium beads, 3 large beads, and these kind of funky beads, they are stuck together. Sometimes that happens in the manufacturing process. They must have gotten a little more, a little heated afterwards, but that's okay. I think it's gonna work anyway. 2 medium beads and 2 small beads. And now we have to think about what we are going to say, right? So I have a bunch of letters here that are left over after spelling out good vibes only. And then I'll show you the second one that I made up here. I wrote happy, I wrote smile, and I wrote joy. So and there are all of these beads left over, right? That's a lot of beads to be left over. So looks like there are people from all over the place who are joining us today. So I'm trying to think, I didn't plan a third word. I'm gonna see kind of like a word jumble if anything jumps out at me. Let's see. It's funny when the words that you have left afterwards. So let's see, here is an M. We're gonna do an E, and is there an R for Mare? And we'll spell my nickname. Yep, we'll do Mare. Okay, so that's me. So, and in between each of these beads is a small bead. So where did my pink beads go? Oh, they're here, right in front of my face. So we're gonna do that. And as I'm going along, I'm going to pick up the beads in the order that I have them. Oh, wow. And thank you very much for putting all of that into the comments. Everyone can see in the comments the pattern that I am doing if you are following along with me. Okay, so now I have, I'm just looking to make sure that after my last one, I am going to do 2 small beads. And this doesn't have to be 100%. Yep, 2 small beads, 2 medium beads, and then 3 large beads. If you want to do this in a different pattern, that is okay. I empower you to do that. And what I found is after this is enough for one, just move that down just a little bit, for one loop. Okay, so let's get started with our stringing. So I have my piece that I cut a couple more than 4.5 loops. It'll probably end up being too much, but again, better to have too much than too little. And that really goes for all things, for bead wire, for craft wire. This stuff isn't precious metals. So I always find it is more wasteful to use less, because that ends up being, let me start that one over again. I generally end up messing up if I have too little rather than too much, and then that whole piece is wasted rather than just a little bit of extra. So now I'm stringing up my pattern. So I have my 2 smalls, and this is just beading 101, right? Just putting your beads onto the wire. And the great thing about memory wire is you don't need a needle. You don't need any special end to be able to do it. Now these little beads here, I thought might give me some trouble, but they're not really giving me some trouble. Just gonna have to push them down a little bit. But I think that they will end up being okay. And once my bracelet is done, nobody's gonna know that they're stuck together. So now I need my 2 medium beads and my 2 small beads. And then I'm going to stop, because what I found is when I am working with these letters, I don't know if anybody else has these challenges, or if it's just me who's a total goofball, but I tend to always put them in either upside down or backwards. And it actually does matter. It took me a little while to figure that out as I was coming up with this pattern. So what you want to do is you want to determine, is this going to be the bottom or is this going to be the top? And it really kind of doesn't matter. You can see here I did the darker color on the top and the lighter color on the bottom. And here I did the darker color on the bottom and the lighter color on the top. So once it's on your wrist, does it really matter? It might for you, for me, not so much. But what that means is you just have to make sure that your letters are all going the same way. It's one of those things that I didn't really think about until I started making the project. And I kept looking at it and I was like, why are my letters not working out? So you want to make sure that you're actually taking, I believe, and let's figure this out together. I think you want to do your words backwards. So let me put on the R and let's see what happens, right? This is trial and error when we're doing our beading. Sometimes we have to undo our beading and that is 100% okay. I think a lot of times what ends up happening when people are first starting out with the beading is they want it to be perfect every time. And so clearly R does not go first in this case, right? M's got to go first. So we're just going to take it off. And it took me a really long time to be able to cut my designs apart, to be able to allow myself to make mistakes. So now let's put the M on and see what happens. I think I'm going to spell I am there. Just do it nice and simple. So now the M, and now we can see the M is upside down. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and take that off. And flip it around. And I'm doing this kind of to make a point that it's okay to make a mistake, but then also, now of course I didn't remember which way I put it, so let's try it again. But also to kind of show that it takes a little bit of concentration and focus to make sure that we get our letters right. All right, so now my M is on and it's going the right way. And I am going to string on my small bead. So I don't know if in the beginning anybody noticed, but we are actually in the Beadalon studio today for class. My other classes that you can actually find if you're interested in the Michael's Class Archive were all done at my home studio. And it is a lot cooler in my basement than it is here in the Beadalon studio. But we are persevering. All right, so now I have my E for mare. And I have seen these word bracelets, and you can see I did it upside down with so many wonderful sayings on them. And I love that you can personalize them. You could do these as mother's bracelets. I love making customized jewelry with children's birthstones. So for moms, for grandparents, for aunts, for friends, it's a really nice way to honor people and honor your kids, honor your grandkids. And let's see if I get this last one right. And I've got my R on. Yep, I did that one right. Third time's the charm, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and follow that pattern again. So let's see what happens next. I don't even have to worry about it because I've already pre-laid out all of my beads, right? So I'm going to put on 2 small beads and then the 2 medium beads. And then the 3 large beads. And I came up with this pattern truly by trial and error to see if it was something that I liked how it looked, if my letters lined up the right way. So if my words are a little bit longer or a little bit shorter, or if I want things to be a little bit more offset, you can kind of work around with the beads that you have to figure out how you want the spacing to go. Okay, so now all I would do is follow the letters and follow the pattern the whole way. And I've actually done that with this bracelet right here. So once again, I'm kind of doing this cooking show style because you don't need to see me stringing up the entire bracelet. But here I have joy on the bottom, and I did that just the same way that I did the mare over here, and then smile, and then happy. So you can see I'm kind of in a good mood today, right? I'm feeling some good vibes. I guess my good vibes only directive over here really helped when I was trying to figure out what I was going to say for this bracelet. So let's see. So now I have to come and do my last bit of beading here. And I, of course, put my last beads a little out of the way. So I'm going to grab them. And if I wanted to keep going, I could keep going, right? This could be this one here on my wrist is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 full rotations around. I was kind of feeling a little sparkly, feeling a little fun. I also had a lot of beads. Sometimes our beading projects are designated by the number of beads that we have available to us, right? That can sometimes be a challenge to work with, but definitely a challenge that I like to take is kind of trying to figure out what I can do with what I have. But then also there's always more is more when it comes to beading, right? I don't know about you guys, but when you sign up for the Michaels classes, there's a question that says something to the effect of, you know, I've been to Michaels in the past, like once in the past year, once in the past month, once in the past week. I need one that is the past day because, yeah. I don't know about you guys who are watching today. I'm hoping that you are birds of my feather and happen to, I don't, yeah, just be at Michael's all the time. In fact, I'm heading there after my video today. I've got some more things to pick up. Okay, so much like we have our loop right here on this side, we're gonna do the same thing on this side. So you want to measure out about a quarter, 3/8 of an inch of wire. And we did have a couple of people join us a little bit later, which allows me to reiterate my point, which is always make sure that you only, this is now what, the third or fourth time I'm saying this, only use memory wire shears to cut your memory wire. Don't think that you can get away with using regular cutters. I'm just looking over here. Usually I have a pair that have been ruined that I can show, but what ends up happening is you get a little hole in the middle of your cutters and then they're ruined forever. So much like with all other beading, you want to make sure that there's a little bit of wiggle room in here, especially if you're using larger beads. One of the things that I find when people are just starting out with beading is there's a tendency to want to tighten up so much that there is no space in between any of these beads and no room for them to move. But what will end up happening is a couple of different things. But the first is that it's going to be too stiff. And not necessarily as much in memory wire beading, but if you're using bead stringing wire, these beads can sometimes have rough edges. And if you don't account for a little bit of wiggle room, those bead edges can actually cut your wire. And you definitely don't want that after you've spent so much time getting those letters on all the right way. You don't want anything to be ruined in your piece. The other thing, especially with memory wire, is if you do it too tight, you can run the risk of cracking your beads, especially these smaller, the smaller glass beads. And if you're using glass seed beads, too much tension on jewelry makes jewelry very unhappy. So you want to make sure that when you do cut this, you leave enough room for your loop that your beads actually have a little bit of wiggle room. So not too much wiggle room so that you have big spaces inside, but just enough wiggle room that all of your beads are happy. So it's about 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch that you want to leave. And again, only using your memory wire shears. And I always like to hold on. I don't know if you can see, I'm holding on. It's a good habit to get into when you are doing beading, to always hold on to whatever the piece that you are cutting off is, especially if you're in classes, because you don't want that to go flying to your neighbor, but you also don't want it to go flying across your living room. Okay, so I'm holding this here with my hands because if there is the opportunity for those beads to possibly go slipping off, and we do not want that. So now I'm gonna come and roughly in the same place that I did that other loop, I'm going to do this loop. Now, I don't have, do I have here? Oftentimes I will put a Sharpie mark right here on my pliers so that I know where I want to make the same sized loop every time, but I can kind of eyeball it. And once again, I'm going to do that same thing that I did in the very beginning. I'm going to rotate my wrist in small movements to get that loop nice and closed. So I'm not taking it and forcing my wrist around. I'm just using little movements. It saves your wrist. It's actually easier to do, and it makes for a nicer loop. And then just that last little step, I'm going to come in here with my chain nose pliers and just back it off a little bit. And my loop, because I was trying to do it both in the camera, the computer, and for you guys, didn't come out quite perfectly. And that's okay. That will happen. All you need to do is just give it a little zhuzh with your pliers, and then you have a perfect loop. Okay, so I feel like zhuzh is my new favorite word, but also a very important word in the beading world, because a lot, especially when you're working with wire, a lot can be fixed with just a little zhuzh. So now I have my happy, my smile, and my joy in my ombre colors, and I think I need this bracelet needs a little extra something, right? It needs a little tassel. I feel like I always say that I have come late to the tassel bandwagon, but now that I'm on the bandwagon, I put tassels on just about everything. So what we're going to do is open up the variety pack, the Beadalon Findings Variety Pack, and I'm going to take a medium-sized jump ring. So there are, I think, no less than 3 different sizes of jump rings in this variety pack. And I'm going to move everything aside, and we can do a quick little lesson on opening and closing a jump ring. Okay, so to do that, I'm using 2 flat nose pliers. You could use a chain nose plier and a flat nose plier. You can use a bent chain nose plier and a flat nose plier. You just need 2 pliers that have flat noses. Do not use a round nose plier to open and close a jump ring. Round nose pliers are only to be used when you're making something round. So no round nose pliers. Let's put those away. 2 flat nose pliers. And now what you want to do is you want to hold the jump ring so that I'm trying to get a really close, tight shot here, so that the split is on the top, and you have 1 pair of pliers on one side and 1 pair of pliers on the other, and you're going to twist it. You can either twist your right hand back and your left hand front, or if it's more comfortable for you, twist your right hand front and your left hand back. Do not pull apart like this though. It's a twist like this, okay? So that is the proper way to open a jump ring. And now what you're going to do is use your charm, and it can be anything. I really like these little little tassel friends. And those are also a Michael's, it's a suede tassel, and it's a pack. I think there are a lot in that pack. So if you participate in many of my classes or look at my tutorials, you'll see those tassels coming up a lot because I really dig them. Okay, so now what you're going to do is just hook the tassel into that loop. So let me, I'm going to take that out and we're going to get even closer. Easy peasy, right? Just hook that right in. And then to close your jump ring, you are just going to go back and forth. And I don't know if you can hear that little click, but there's a little click that you'll hear when that jump ring closes the right way. And for a while, when people would say that little click, I thought somehow like maybe it locked together. It's just the metal very gently hitting against each other so that you know that it is as close as it can be, or close as it can be and close as it should be. And then, not to be left aside with having the charm only on one side and not on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing and add this nice little heart locket to the loop that's on the bottom. So once again, I'm going to go to my Findings Variety Pack and pull out that medium-sized jump ring. And if you have, if you only have a smaller or a larger jump ring, that's okay too. Your jump rings do not have to match or be the same size. So once again, let me move some of this stuff out of the way so we can see what I'm doing. So I'm holding here and I'm just very gently rotating my wrist to open that right up. So not pulling apart, just rotating my wrist. And now I am going to hook that locket in. And I could put this locket down here, right? Sorry about that, guys. Put this locket down here, and then we can style this up with all kinds of fun things to dangle off of. And then just close that right back up so that those ends come together. So on this bracelet, I actually don't have any dangles, right? But on this one, I don't know. I feel like it's always, I made this one a long time ago before I got into my tassel phase. But that is really as easy as it can be. The important things to remember are when you're cutting your memory wire, always use, let's say it, everybody say it with me, only use your memory wire shears. To finish off your ends, all you need are some round nose pliers. And then the sky is the limit for whatever kind of embellishment you want. But to make a really pretty ombre color blocked design, these beads from Michael's, again, they are the glass aqua ombre or the glass pink ombre, which I have here also, are a great option to use. And once you start spelling things out, you are definitely not going to want to stop. I know I want to put uplifting messages for everybody. I think actually I want to get one that has darker blue beads and do a Beadalon one. That'll be my next project. So Yvette, was there anything that I forgot? Any questions that came through from people who maybe something wasn't clear? We are all good? Anything?
No, people were very grateful for your instructions. Did have a couple questions if you could add charms in between the letters.
Oh, 100%. And actually, let's go ahead and do that, right? I don't have a great big bunch of charms, but what I can do is actually just take this off and show you. So jump rings are great because you can attach anything to almost anything. So if you wanted to attach a charm, I don't know, maybe like right here, I would actually do it as I'm going along. It will be easier to just have your charm on the jump ring and attach it as you go along. But say you're like, oh, this really needs to have a charm in the middle. You can, let's see if I can do it without having the extra space in here. let's see, it's not going to want to go in here. Let's try it in a different place. There are a couple of different ways that you can do this, but you can see the challenge that I'm having is because this jump ring doesn't want to go around these beads. So what I would do to make it easier on myself is close that jump ring up nice and tight. Stay in frame, Meredith. And where is the one that I started? Here we go. I'm just going to trim this so it's a little bit easier to show. And again, whenever I trim something, I try to hold on to both sides. It's just good practice to get into. So I have my charm here with my jump ring. And then I'm just going to thread that on as if it's a bead. There are also really fun findings that you can buy. I actually just saw them in the beading section of Michael's, where it's a tube with a ring on it. And so you could string that tube on and then use that ring to dangle anything that you wanted to dangle afterwards. But see, so here it is in the middle, and then you can continue going on with your beads around, which would be a really, really nice look.
I have a couple more questions. Another one was, how do you get the words to line up? If they don't line up, is there any tricks or suggestions? And another one is if you can show how to close the loop again.
How to close, what was the last part?
The loop on the end of the wire.
Close the loop again, okay. So to get the words to line up, so a couple of different things. It's going to depend a little bit on the size of your wrist, okay? Because what ends up happening with the memory wire is, and what makes memory wire so great, is it's going to expand or contract to the size of your wrist. So this one I just kind of did a little bit haphazard, and it ended up working out okay for my wrist. Really, the best thing that I can say is trial and error. And because this is a very fast project, taking beads on and off is not actually going to be that frustrating or take that long, which is really what I did to get the spacing for this right. You could take out a tape measure and measure everything and do the math and add and subtract by millimeters, and do kind of like a little bit of next level design work to make it happen. But honestly, when I teach, I want it to be easy. I want it to be fun. I don't want there to be math involved. So if I can get the first one right and then kind of come up here to get the second color, and you know, you can put it on your body, you can use a bracelet mandrel, you can find a jar that's the size of your wrist. So those are a couple of tips and tricks that you can use. But for me, without kind of going through and doing all of the math and 4 millimeters and 6 millimeters, and here we are with all different kinds of and sizes of beads, when you're doing it, you can really just kind of line it up, and it will be, it should be good to go. So to show that the bend one last time, I'm just going to show it right here on the end of the wire. And I'm coming in here with my round nose pliers, and I usually come up about halfway up my pliers. So if you wanted a bigger loop, of course you would come all the way up here. If you wanted a little teeny tiny loop, down here. But I like about halfway. And different pliers have different sized jaws. So you might find if you're using like an ergo plier, this is the wrong head, but this kind of a plier, you might find that the jaws are a little bit larger. Okay, so you're going to come in here and you want to make sure that this little tip here is not sticking out, right? You don't want a whole lot of slack there. You just want a little bit sticking out. And I usually kind of use my finger. Make sure you don't poke your finger. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll my wrist, and I'm going to roll my wrist horizontally and counterclockwise. So I find really good practice with all beading for all loop making is to hold your hand horizontally. Not up like this, not over like this, but horizontal to the, horizontal to, I don't know, the world, but parallel to your work surface. And then instead of over rotating your wrist, all you need to do is just little movements holding on to that loop, okay? So I watched my loop while I did it. Now I'm gonna watch and make sure that you guys can see really, really well when I do that. Okay, so release, turn, release, turn, release, okay? And then I check my work, and it looks like, because I was looking on the computer rather than at the loop, I over rotated just a skosh, but that's okay because memory wire is hard, but it is not unbendable. So I just want to come in here and make sure that the end of the memory wire is touching the other part of the memory wire, okay? And so then my kind of pro tip that I always like to give is come back in here with either a bent chain nose or a chain nose pliers. I'll show it with the chain nose pliers this time because not everybody has bent chain nose pliers. Is you're gonna hold it right on the inside, use your thumb as a brace, and just push it back ever so slightly so that now instead of being a P shape, you have an I pin shape. It just, I like the way that looks a little bit better. Most people will just keep that P shape, and that's fine. But I like having just that I pin shape. I think it looks a little bit nicer than just having the P shape. And it looks like Laura or someone from Michael's just noted my next class. Yes, the same time next Monday. And we're going to be making a lariat using the knotter tool. It's a little bit more of an advanced project, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And anybody who does not have a knotter tool and who wants to learn how to knot between beads, between pearls. In this case, we're actually doing kind of a tin cup style with a little variation. This was a very simple project. Next week is a little more intermediate. I almost might go to advanced, but hopefully I'll be able to break it down and everybody will at least learn how to use the knotter tool. But the great thing about that kind of a project, much like with the memory wire or with basic beading or with any of the things or any of the skills that you are adding to your jewelry making repertoire, is once you have the skill down, there are so many different variations. Once you learn how to use the tool, you can use the tool in so many different ways to make so many different beautiful designs. So I think that is it for me. I want to say thank you so much to Michaels for allowing me to teach everybody how to make all different kinds of jewelry projects. This is my passion. This is where I find my joy. And so being able to share that with everybody is wonderful. So hopefully everyone will be able to join me again next Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern time, 12 o'clock Central Time. And if there's no other questions, then I will say until next time, happy beading.